Welcome to the Monday Monologue. Well, today I want to talk a little bit about a subject that I'm not going to claim to be an expert on. And this may be one of those things a year from now I go, wow, I can't believe I said that. But hey, I'm going to kind of give you my take on it today. It comes up a lot in discussions of vinyl versus digital or vinyl versus CDs. And I'm trying to compare it to my experience working in photography, because film, digital sensors, all that stuff also has dynamic range. And I've got my friend here, my little OM4 Ti with a 55 1.2 Zuiko lens, which is a sweet little camera, but kind of reminds me to talk about photography compared to audio. So print film or negative film has, I believe it's about 14 stops of latitude. And it's way more than like slide film, which has 5 or 6 stops. But the reason slide film only has 5 or 6 stops of latitude is if it had more than that, the results would just look muddy, because it would be spread out over such a wide spectrum of light. It just wouldn't look realistic. And our human eyes see about 5 or 6 stops of light at any one time. And we have better vision like at night than we do in the daytime, because our eyes get adjusted to the light levels in the, wherever we're at, whether it's inside, outside, whatever. And if you're in a dark room, if you wait about 10 minutes, your sensitivity of your eyes adjusts to that darker environment, and you can see light, really faint light that you wouldn't have seen when you first got in the room. And I'm sure y'all know when you walk from inside to outside, it takes a little while for your eyes to adjust to the bright sun, and the same thing when you go back inside. And there's more going on than just the iris of our eyes opening and closing. The sensitivity of the light sensors in our eyes adjust to the illumination in the room as the light levels change. So, again, back to this thing, when you're shooting with a format that has a really wide dynamic range, when you end up in the printing process, you end up throwing away some of that information to get down to a usable range that will look good in the print. And digital is even a wider range with photography. And that can be a good thing if you screw up the exposure, especially some of the sensors like the Sony sensors that are in my Nikon cameras. They're really good at pulling information out of the shadows. Or if you underexpose an image, especially if you shoot with the RAW file, you can dig information out of the shadows by shifting the exposure digitally, because the sensor's recording it, it's just not being seen in the initial JPEG preview. So that can be useful, but if you ever clip the highlights, they're gone. You'll never recover those. And so that's why you kind of expose down on digital, or underexpose rather than overexpose. And like the little screen on the back, I have it set so it does blinkies if there's blown highlights, so I know that those are gone. And it may be necessary. Sometimes there's just too much dynamic range in the scene you're photographing to capture everything. So how does that relate to audio? Well, I think in audio, we all understand the idea that if something's too loud and it's being recorded too hot, and basically like overexposing a picture, that you'll clip the loud parts and you'll never record that information. So if you've got a source that's clipping Or if you've got an amplifier that's clipping, it's not going to sound good because you're blowing out information. And that's part of the problem with the whole loudness wars, is they were just driving the signal up where it was just clipping the tops off of everything, trying to get the signal as loud as they could get, so it would play loud over the radio or, in a CD player or whatever. And some people thought that sounded better, but now we're learning that, yeah, in an audiophile kind of setting, it sounds horrible. So the other end of the spectrum with audio, we have a noise floor. And I know in my house, measured it earlier today, and I've measured it several times. I don't live in a real noisy area, but it's an urban kind of area, and there's traffic a street over that's pretty steady and that sort of thing. So the noise floor of my house is about 40 dBs. And so, sounds that are below that, and I don't know if you can hear it, there's a dog barking right now. I mean, stuff like that's happening all the time in an urban area. And so it brings the noise floor up. And so if we're starting out at 40 dBs, that means that if I've got a system that's trying to play sounds that are like 20 dBs, I'm not going to hear them. They're below the noise floor. And I never listen to music louder than normally about 80 dBs, kind of as the median range, 75 to 80 dBs. Peaks might go to 85, but I try to keep it below 85 dBs as on peaks. And so, given that scenario, I only need like 45 dBs of dynamic range from the source media. And vinyl can easily deliver that. Now, if I was one of these folks that likes to listen at 100 dBs and my house had a noise floor of like 30 dBs, I might be able to benefit from having something that had 70 dBs of dynamic range. But, and maybe I'm not understanding something right, but I don't think I'm missing this. We can't use 125 dBs. For one thing, our ears do adjust to the sound pressure level in the room. And you can experiment with this. I have. If I want to hear something that's really quiet, you can stick your fingers in your ears for a couple of minutes, and when you take your fingers out, everything sounds louder. And that's your mechanism in your ear that's adjusting to the sound pressure levels. And the same thing's true if you're listening to music that's 70, 75, 80 dBs in that range, and there's a real quiet passage, you're probably not going to hear it. So I think we really need to take that kind of stuff into account when we're trying to make a decision about like whether this is going to be better than this or what our actual needs are. And this idea that we need 24 bits instead of 16 bits and that sort of thing with for the extra dynamic range in digital, I don't think that's where really the improvement's coming from. I think that it's just when it's being remastered for that. And again, it could be way off base here. And frickin' this dog's driving me crazy. He's just barking his head off outside. Anyway, yeah. So let me know in the comments what you think about dynamic range. And I need to do some more research on that. And I'm sure this, hopefully this isn't too hot a topic, but I think it's probably why I don't hear this giant difference between like CDs and vinyl that people are claiming I should hear, because in my use case, that extra dynamic range just isn't being used. And again, if you've got some music that's got a part of the passages down at 30 dBs and then it blows past 100, I'm not going to hear that stuff down at 30 dBs because the stuff that would be at 100 is turned down to 80, and so that super quiet stuff is going to be below my hearing threshold and way below the noise floor of my house. And I think it becomes the kind of non-dynamic, and maybe it's too dynamic is the word, where it's whisper quiet and then it's blasting loud, that I don't personally find to be engaging music to listen to. But I do think that, like this whole loudness wars thing where they were compressing all the music within like a 10 dB range, was definitely not good sounding either. So anyway, probably going to talk about that more in the future, but I thought I'd toss that out there for discussion. Got this little guy figured out, and definitely was frustrating, but it was a good learning experience, and it made me realize how important chassis layout is on building tube gear or repairing tube gear or modifying it, and making sure that you use best practices. And I probably need to do a video series on best practices for laying out tube chassis design stuff and components and all that. And I know I talk about that a lot when I'm working through, my build series about why I put the rectifier tube over here and why I put these capacitors here and why I'm laying out these wires the way I do. And I'm still kind of shocked when some people try to build one of my designs and they just ignore all of that and kind of willy-nilly just move things around for the way they think it's going to look better. And then I get a bunch of emails about, hey, this doesn't work, this is noisy, your design's a piece of crap, and I'm like, you didn't follow what I was showing you. And there's a reason why that I lay stuff out the way I do. So I think this amp build mod, whatever you want to call it, really highlights the importance of the layout and making sure that things are done to best practices. So anyway, I know this video is a little later than usual, so still trying to get it out on Monday. My hand is improving. I had surgery on it last week. They did the trigger thumb and it's healing. It's still a little tender, and they told me not to be putting a lot of strain on it or picking up anything heavy. So I've been trying to rest it while I'm still making sure the range of motion stays. They said, within another week or so, it should be all good to go. I do have some repair work that I got a customer that I promised I feel bad about, that he sent it to me right before I went in for my other surgery. And I've gotten a little bit done on it, but I've gotten kind of behind because of all this medical stuff. But I did kind of warn him. It's like, hey, I'm fixing to go have surgery. And he's like, I'm shipping it tomorrow. And I'm like, okay. But, okay. Anyway, hopefully he'll understand. If he doesn't, I can't worry about that. And trying to think of anything else really new going on. I've been playing around with my photography a little more and been enjoying that. Trying to wind up my last year on the city council in the little city I live in. We've got a lot of cool stuff going on. We're really kind of rebooting our whole city center. We're tearing down all the buildings, the old stuff, and they weren't historical old buildings. Somebody commented about that in a video, or maybe it was an email, I can't remember. But anyway, these were just some crappy old buildings that were in need of a lot of repair, and rather than spend a bunch of money on it, we decided to just redesign the whole town center. So that's kind of an exciting thing for my little city. So like I talked about last week, that Amy Winehouse, Back to Black, Abbey Roads half-speed mastering thing, the Abbey Roads vinyl portion of it was just not good either. I think the master tape is just garbage. And people are trying to pull something out of, it's back to what I was talking about. You got clipped highlights, or the loudness wars got done to the master tape, and there's just too much missing information to really get a good clean audio file, quality recording, or pressing out of that master tape. But I told you that the bonus album sounded really good. So somebody in the comments mentioned this Amy Winehouse at the BBC. And so I ordered this little set. And this is a 3-album set, kind of limited edition thing. I'm not even sure who recorded this. It's an Island Records release. Anyway, I'll put a link to it below. This sounds freaking amazing. I mean, all 3 albums are just clear, super high quality. The pressing has almost no surface noise, and her voice is just like crystal clear, like you would expect with a good recording. So, she went to this BBC, and I think this was a live concert. It sounds amazing. Don't know how long these are going to be around. I think it said it was a limited edition deal, so you might want to get one now before they're all gone. So, if you're an Amy Winehouse fan, that version is well worth investing in. I don't know if there's a streaming version of it. I didn't even look. Could be, and it may sound great too, but that vinyl sounds really good. The other thing that's coming up for review here soon is I was sent one of these little Yamaha A80s, which don't know anything about it yet. It's supposed to be a nice unit. Need to do a little demo on it and spend some time listening to it. I know they're pressing me. I mean, I got it about a week ago, and they're like, have you done a review yet? We want to see that. You know, it's like, come on, guys. Like, chill out. I'll get to it when I can. So, hopefully, sometime next week, I'll have a review on this little guy done, and that should be interesting. The other thing is I was sent a pair of these 101D PS Vane tubes, and I may have finally found someone locally that has a preamp that uses those, and I don't have anything that uses those tubes right now. And so I haven't really been able to demo the tubes. And I kind of feel bad that I had them send me a pair of these. I thought that a friend of mine had an amp that used those, but it was another like tennis ball kind of Western Electric tube that's got a different heater voltage and stuff, and they won't work in it. And so, again, I think I found someone that has a preamp that does use those, and if that doesn't work out, we may end up having to build a preamp and see what those things sound like. They're a really low gain tube, which would actually work good for a lot of the preamp uses that these tube amps or solid state amps would need, and it's a direct heated triode tube, which could add a neat sound, more of that color preamp kind of thing. So apologize to PS Vane that I haven't been able to really demo those tubes for them. And I don't want to do like a fake review that I didn't actually listen to the tubes. I'm sure they sound good. They sound like any of the other Horizon tubes. They are coming out with another line of higher end tubes that I think include a 300B and a KT88 and possibly an EL34. I have to go back and look at their emails, and I'm supposed to get some early production of those, so that'll be a fun thing to review. And yeah, I think that's kind of it for the Monday Monologue. So thanks all you folks for tuning in. Thanks to you subscribers, all you folks that participate with my membership program on YouTube or participate with Patreon. I really appreciate you. Thanks to you folks that make donations to the website or send me gear like this and are patiently waiting for me to fix it up for you. And I do plan on working on this little guy soon, my Globe Tube amp. It's always had kind of a struggle with making enough power with the modern sources without using a preamp. And I guess the 27 tube that is the front end driver just really doesn't have enough guts to drive that 47 Pentode. And so I'm going to do a quick mod to it where I'm hoping that putting a 56 globe tube in there will give me the extra gain I need to really make that amp usable, because sadly it just doesn't quite have enough gain, and it ends up sitting on my shelf down here just looking pretty. So anyway, hopefully we'll be doing some of that soon and get this thing off my plate, get that other customer's ST70 repaired, and we'll move on to some new projects. So anyway, thanks again for watching, and we'll see you next week for the Monday Monologue.